free Rutgers Residence Life Google Hangouts for incoming students. My name is Michael Lambie, and today we're going to meet some resident assistants and a professional staff member who's going to talk about living on campus and what you can expect as a first-year student while living on campus. If you're watching us live, please know that you can comment in the YouTube comments, and we will take your questions in the second half of this session and answer them as we go along. What I want to do right now is introduce our panelists. So Chris, I'm going to start with you. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Chris. I am a rising senior, and I am a resident assistant on College Ave in Denver.
Great, thank you. Hinal, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Hinal. I'm a resident assistant on Bush campus, and I'm also going to be a rising senior.
Great, thank you. Matt, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Matthew. I am going to be a rising senior, and I'm an RA on Bush campus in Bar Hall for first-year engineering students.
Wonderful, thank you. And finally, Mauricia, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marissa Hughes. I'm the Residence Life Educator for the Linton Hall Towers on the Livingston campus, which is a freshman dorm.
Wonderful, thank you. So we have a good overview of staff and a professional staff member here today. So we're going to start with our pre-written questions, and then again, as we go along, if you're watching live, please feel free to comment in the section, ask any questions, and we will answer those questions after our beginning discussion. So Chris, we'll start with you. Why don't you talk to everyone a little about why you chose to live on campus as a first-year student?
Well, first I chose to live on campus because personally I live an hour and 30 minutes away from Rutgers University, and for me that was the best choice. But I also wanted to have that sense of community, which I didn't think I was going to get if I was commuting from that far distance. So luckily I lived in New Gibbons on the Douglas campus, and I love the community there. And I definitely wanted to make some friends while I was living where I was at, so that was a perfect way for me to really make some connections, and that's what I did.
Great, thank you. Hino, why don't you talk a little about why you chose to live on campus?
For me, it was also just getting the experience of being at college, because I think it was like one of the first times that we were actually allowed to be on our own and be not completely self-sufficient, but self-sufficient for the first time. And it was also about putting myself out of my comfort zone and trying to grow a little bit more, which I definitely did by living on campus as a first-year student.
Wonderful. Matt, what about you? Why did you choose to live on campus your first year?
Well, similar to Chris, I'm about an hour and 30 minutes away, and also just the thought of being able to make new friends and immersing myself in what college is and what the idea of it was, and I thought living on campus would be a great way to do so.
Wonderful. Our second question, what is the best part of living on campus? Matt, why don't we start with you?
Well, honestly, the best part of living on campus was just the constant interaction with everyone else. You meet so many different people here at Rutgers, at least. The diversity is great, and it just opens so many different doors and ideas that I wouldn't think about having if I didn't live on campus.
Wonderful, wonderful. Hino, why don't you tell us what you feel the best part of living on campus is?
I think it's just the people that you meet, because there are a lot, like, when you go to class and stuff, you don't necessarily come across meeting all the different people that you meet when you're living in a residence hall or in a dorm, because those people don't necessarily have class with you. So it's just like building those relationships with those people that you wouldn't have met otherwise.
Great. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's one of those first steps for people who live on campus to be immersed not only in their residential community, but also the entire Rutgers community. So I think that was one of the big things for me living on campus my first year.
Great. Mauricia, from your perspective as a professional, what do you think is one of the best reasons that first-year students should live on campus?
I would personally say that based on my experience and what we've noticed with our students is it increases flexibility for them to try more things, to explore more things, and they're so immersed in the culture at the university, they don't really have to plan so far in advance. They can hear about something at the very last minute, and it allows them to, step outside their boundaries and to create even more independence and to try things that they wouldn't necessarily always try. So I think it increases flexibility to try more, to explore more, and to grow more.
Wonderful. Thank you. Our next question. what is one piece of advice you would give incoming first-year students about living on campus? Hino, why don't we start with you?
Honestly, to be open to trying different things and making sure that you're putting yourself out there and getting out of your comfort zone, because there are a lot of opportunities at Rutgers that you get presented by living on campus, like that lead from doing things within the residence hall to meeting people to even joining organizations. So as long as you're willing to take the steps to go to do those things, you'll have a great experience, but you have to make sure that you're actually doing that.
Great. Chris, what about you? What's your piece of advice?
Yeah, along with that, just being open and also being willing to step out of your comfort zone, like we mentioned. So knocking on your neighbor's door and meeting them for the first time, and then it's how you make friends. That's how you become more connected with the people you live with, because when you're living on campus, you want to feel as comfortable as possible in your living space, and so knowing the people in that building is what that's at.
Great. Matt, what about you?
Living on campus is about building a community. And what you can do is you can join as many different organizations that Rutgers has to offer with the people on your floor or in your building to help foster that community and make it larger. And you get the activities that you are interested in, and you might find interest with people that live next door to you or down the hall or upstairs. You never know. So I would say get involved as much as possible.
Great. And Mauricia, what about you? What piece of advice would you give our incoming first-year students?
I would say don't be afraid to ask questions. As a university, we make sure that we have different levels of resources available to our students, from your RA to your professional staff in campus, on campus, as well as peer mentors in the building. There's always a level of different resources that are available to students. So I always encourage students to ask those questions. No question is ever silly, and by asking questions, you get to find out more things. You get to explore new avenues. So I would say encourage questions and, just stretch a little bit beyond more of what your everyday life consists of.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, let's go to our final pre-written question, and then we'll start taking questions from you, our audience. What is the one way that you feel, as an RA, you help our first-year students to live and adjust to Rutgers University? And Mauricia, why don't I start with you? What do you do in your building specifically, and what have you seen in other buildings that help our first-year students adjust to Rutgers?
I'm a very big component of my students presenting themselves as leaders on campus, and I think with anybody coming into a new environment, I stress to my staff members all the time that you are the top percentage of leaders on our campus, and you lead by example. You want individuals to know, during your time here at Rutgers, this is how you have grown as an individuals and the possibilities that are there for them as freshmen and how they will continue to grow as they're here at Rutgers. In addition to that, I think the biggest part as an RA is being a resource to our community. Not only are they a resource to themselves, they're a resource to the individuals who see them as leaders on campus, and they're able to teach and grow both from their experiences and the trainings that we have given them as a department.
Wonderful, thanks. Chris, what about you? What do you feel that you do as an RA, or have you seen RAs do that help our students adjust?
As an RA, I think that I'm a mentor. For some students living on campus for the first time, they're used to having their parents or guardians with them in the household or wherever they live. But I stress that I'm not a parent or a guardian. I'm a student here as well. I've been through college somewhat, so I've had the experience of living on campus. But most of all, I'm here to be a mentor. I'm here to share with you in your struggles if you have anything, and also be there for the good times. When you're going through a success, I'm here to root you on as well. So just have that figure in the residence hall as well.
Great. Hino, what about you?
I think for me, it's definitely just being around and asking them to see if everything's okay, because sometimes it's just nice to have someone to talk to or someone to share your experiences with, and a lot of times if you're a first year, you might not necessarily know too many people, so it's just having someone ask, hey, how are you doing, how is your day, do you need help with anything, and just being around is at least that's what helps me as an RA get to know my residents and also just help them with whatever they need.
Great. And Matt, what about you?
Well, for me, from the first time I talked to the residents at a first floor meeting, I encourage them to ask questions, anything they have. My door is usually always open. I go around like Keenel does and just randomly talk to residents, just to see how their day-to-day is going, if there's anything that they would like to talk about, just so they know that I'm there for them, and also that I'm available to listen if they ever need it.
Great, great. All right, so what we are going to do now is take your comments and questions. So we are going to read these and ask you some of the questions that we have. One of the first questions I will field. People have been asking throughout the summer as I meet you at orientation about when you get your assignment and what comes with that email. So our assignments office, part of our department here in Residence Life, has stated that the assignment emails will go out to the email address that you, the student, has provided us when you completed the application. The email will go out. It will have information about your campus, your building, your room number, as well as it will have information about your roommate. The roommate that's living in your room, and if you are in a community that is a suite, so Best Hall, Winkler, the RUTV broadcast community, or McCormick, the SAS honors community, all of those communities are suites, and you may have your suite members' names in that list as well. All of that will come out on August 7th via email. They generally go out at around 9:30, 10 in the morning, and if you can't find it, sometimes that email goes to your spam. So please check your spam, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to email us or call us. I also get another question, oftentimes, about how do we learn about move-in, and I've gotten that a couple times right now. So move-in, again, I apologize, panelists, I'll answer this one. Move-in, and all of that information is posted in our move-in guide on our website. So you may have gotten the link for this Hangout on our website, or you may have gone and gotten the link via Facebook or Twitter, but the move-in guide is off of our website, ruoncampus.rutgers.edu/move-in guides. And from there, you'll get a digital move-in guide, information about what to bring, what not to bring, what the room comes with, as well as directions, dates for move-in, and times for move-in. So all of that is located there. Please don't hesitate to post comments or questions. So I want to ask another question of the group, and this is for our students. Students, why don't you talk to us a little about what is your best memory from living on campus? What is one thing that you're going to take away and years from now you'll still talk about? So I'll give you a second to think about that. And Matt, when you're ready, why don't you let us know what is that one memory that really means residence life for you?
All right. The one thing that I really enjoyed was when I was a first-year student in Metzger Hall on Bush campus. We had Step Into the Spotlight, which is a big program that we do across campus. And just seeing all the residents and all my friends come out and perform and not realizing what they were doing or not seeing everything that's different and what they didn't normally show was just a great experience. Gave me so much more to talk to them about. I found found so many more different interests. It was just really great.
Wonderful. Thank you. Chris, why don't you talk about what is that one experience that you really feel you're going to remember and take away from living on campus?
I think one of my best on-campus moments, like living in a residence hall, happened as an RA. One of my residents, for the very first time, was going to be in a show here at Rutgers, and my entire floor, we went to go see him perform, and we literally took up the whole entire theater. And for me, that just showed that we were more than just a community in the residence hall, we were also a community everywhere we went around the Rutgers campus. So that's the kind of connection we made with each other, that we always support each other.
Great. Thank you. And Hino, why don't you talk to us about what is that one memory that you are going to forever take away about living on campus?
For me, it would be my very first day as a freshman. I remember me and my roommate moved in. Like we were friends from high school, so like we were gonna live together, but we didn't know anyone else in our building. Like we lived in Davidson, so we went around that very first day. We just like knocked on everybody's door. It's like, hey, like, do you guys want to go to the dining hall? And like I think that was like the first time like we as like our first year floor went to eat and stuff. So I think just because it was very nerve wracking, like, oh, I'm gonna go knock on their doors and just see like what if they like, no, we don't want to talk to you. It worked out.
Good, good. We have some questions about if people could talk a little about what the communities are like in the buildings. What is the community like? We keep using this word community. What do we mean by that? And again, if we could somehow put that into words for our students and their families to understand. Mauricio, why don't we start with you, since you have some more experience than the students, and then being a professional staff member, and then we'll ask them.
Okay, for me, basically working in the towers, I would say that we have one of the most vibrant communities because it is a primarily freshman dorm, and I stress with my staff member that a community is an environment where individuals are able to learn from each other. And it's not just always about the fun, but the educational component that comes with it. We all come from different walks of life, and we all have a story to tell. We all have different interests, and it's always good when you can learn from someone every day in your life. So I always stress that a community is an environment where you learn and grow from others around you and from their life experiences.
Great. Chris, I'm going to start with you. Describe your community. Describe what you feel a community is and what you're shooting for as an RA.
I think that community is basically a group of people who come together, like we mentioned before, from different walks of life. But right now, for some reason, basically to live in this hall. And the interesting is just watch that develop, because communities develop over time. People learn about each other, they learn about what their dislikes are, what their likes are, and things like that, and they become sort of one. So when they do all of the dining hall together, they represent where they're living, because they know that the Brett Hall or Demers Hall, when they're going to Broward together, dining hall and College Ave, they are going as a unit, and they're going to eat together and represent who they are. So that's what communities are to me, and as an RA, I want to help that. I want them to be proud of where they live on campus.
Great, thank you. Hina, what about you? Talk about what you feel a community is and what you strive for.
In a very literal sense, it's like if you think of a community like where you live at home, whether it's like an apartment building or like a house, the people that live around, like that's your community. So when you come to Rutgers, the residence hall that you live in, the people that are living on the floor with you, the floor above or below you, like that is your community because they're living right there with you. So what you decide to do with them and build the relationship you have with them is kind of what you're doing to build the community that you have there. And for me personally, like the way I usually go about building my community is trying to find things that we all want to do and then doing those things together and just bonding. Like I know for my residence last year, like I wanted to have a movie night, so I asked them, I was like, what movie do you guys want to watch? I had a floor of all first-year females, so they wanted to watch Mean Girls. So we watched Mean Girls, and we all sat there, we baked, and it was just bonding for us because it was something that we all enjoyed to do together.
Great, I love that movie. She doesn't even go here. Great. Matt, talk to me about what you feel community is and how you see that being built.
Last year, as well as this year, I'm in Bar Hall again, which is primarily first-year engineering students. And at first, I didn't know much about it, and it was just building the community there. I figured, mostly about fostering to their wants to be engineers. But actually getting in the residence life position and seeing them as an RA, it was different. I kind of noticed what Hina was saying and what Chris was saying. Building community is much more than that. It's like building the friendships, about building where you live, building upon everything that you do at once. So it factors into everything that you do here at Rutgers, and it just builds and it will create friendships. Building community is having those friendships to last you all through your 4 years, 5 years, however long you're here at Rutgers.
Great, that's wonderful. We have a very honest question from someone who says, I've never shared a room with anyone. How do you help navigate that process, and what is some advice you want to give about sharing a room with someone? So, Hino, I'll start with you. What advice do you give your students, and would you give our incoming students about sharing their space with a roommate?
I think the very first thing you have to do is like before you can figure out exactly what you need to establish, you need to spend a few days to figure out what it is that you can and cannot have someone that lives with you do. So once you figure that out, like, oh, like I don't want you touching my stuff, or oh, I don't mind if you like use my hair products or whatever, like you have to figure that out and then sit down and just talk to the person that you're living with and just hash that out, like, oh, this is okay, but this isn't okay. Like, I like to generally sleep at this time. I'm a light sleeper. And just if you talk through it, like, you basically just avoid a lot of the problems that could come up. And I think that's the thing that, like, most people don't necessarily think about. It's like, oh, if I just tell them ahead of time, I can avoid a lot of conflicts in the future.
Great. That's very good advice. It's very, very good advice. Good. Chris, what about you? How do you feel like you would help a student navigate living with a roommate for the first time, and what advice would you give them about that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with addressing those kind of topics from the beginning. From the start of the semester, giving a roommate agreement contract, and I think taking that seriously and outlining just the different parameters of living together is important. Because I remember when I first came, I lived on campus at Rutgers, I've never shared a room before, so if it was overly messy, that's no one's problem except for mine. But I loved my first roommate here at Rutgers because we did set some ground rules for how we wanted to live, and I didn't want to make the room messy for him in case we had guests over, things like that. But I also just both want to be very comfortable in our space. So I think we just established our goal of living together. We both want to be comfortable. We want to have a space to study at times. Sometimes we both want to have friends over, things like that. So establish those kind of topics from the beginning, so it helps.
Wonderful. Thanks, Chris. Again, really good advice. Really good advice. And Matt, what about you? How would you help students understand and work with their roommates?
Well, as Chris and Hino both said, you have to be able to know what bugs you in a sense, and what you can live without, what you can live with, because it's a whole new experience. As Chris said, the roommate contract that you'll get in the beginning when you guys first move in will be very important. Take that seriously. Have questions, talk about it. Also, something that I did with my roommate was when you get the assignment to get like contact information for them, just reach out to them, start talking, start that conversation. That way, when you come into Rutgers, you know a little bit about it, and you know about them a little bit more, and you can work it out.
Wonderful. Mauricia, again, as our seasoned professional, talk a little about what advice you would give students, and you do give students, to help them work through living with a roommate for the first time.
Yes. I think my first advice is always to be honest. I know that it's important coming into college that you want your roommate to be your friend, but you have to have those honest conversations when these situations do arise so that it doesn't build over time. As things arise, it's best to address them as they come up instead of waiting until things pile up, and then you feel like, you're backed into a wall. Being honest with, like, what is it that you're willing to work with? What are some things that are really not, conducive for you living in this specific environment? And just being willing to sit down and understand, like, okay, this is what I can tolerate, and being willing to listen to that person and have it be a dialogue and not just a one-way conversation. And anyone who knows me will say that I'm a fan of not saying, well, you're doing this, I don't like what you're doing. I'm a fan of saying, well, this is what I'm experiencing and how can we work on it, and not always putting the blame on someone else, but how can we work to make this environment good for both of us?
Great. So turning it around and stating it in a way that is you focused, I feel this way, and how can we together make this work for us? Great advice from everyone. All right, so we have another question about getting involved. How easy is it to get involved, and what advice would you give students who want to get involved when they first get here? Where would you direct them? Matt, I'll start with you.
Well, getting involved is one of the easiest things to do at Rutgers. Upon move-in, there's usually someone from the Residence Hall Association. A lot of people just say it as RHA. Have that give you information, get involved in your hall government. That's one of the easiest things to do at Rutgers. They're always willing to take people. But also, if you go into getinvolved.rutgers.edu, you can search anything that interests you, and I can guarantee there'll be a club for you or an organization that you'd be willing to join. And if there isn't one, you can create it. Rutgers gives you that opportunity. You can go through, you can find some people that have similar interests, and you can just create that club, and that way someone else who comes along will be interested in joining it as well. There's so many different opportunities to get involved. Just gotta look for them.
Great, thank you. Hino, what about you? How about getting involved? Any advice or any ideas about getting involved right away?
I would say that they have the fall involvement fair at the beginning of the semester. Definitely, all freshmen should go to that because all the organizations are there. They give out information about what they're all about. And I think that before anyone takes a step to commit to any one organization, definitely do your research and make sure that you've looked at all the other organizations as well, because you don't want to also just join everything and then end up stretching yourself too thin between doing all of that and academics. But there are so many organizations at Rutgers that I'm sure that they can definitely find something that fits to them. It's just a matter of doing the research and waiting to find that organization instead of just right away jumping into the first thing that they come across.
Great. Chris, Mauricia, do you have any other piece of advice or any other information about getting involved for our first-year students?
I think all those things were great. Like the websites we have, involvement fair is a big thing. Students can the 400 plus organizations we have, and there's a representative from every organization that's there. So you can make connections there. But I also think, like we mentioned earlier, asking questions is a big thing. That's going to help a lot of information. So ask your floor mates what their interests are, and then perhaps they know organizations on campus. And definitely ask your RA. They've been through this process a little bit, so they're most likely they're involved in organizations. So asking them about their experience with getting involved will definitely help as well.
Great. That's an absolutely great suggestion. And I'll jump in and add that what I would want you to do is tell your RA what you enjoyed doing in high school. We may not call it the same thing, but they can point you to the club that is closest, if not pretty much the same thing. It just may have a different name. So don't hesitate to say, hey, I was in 4-H in high school, and they may say, oh, it's called the Agricultural Association here, and be able to point you in that direction as well. So I definitely think Chris's advice of using your RA is definitely essential, and you just need to make sure that you're telling them and explaining to them what you're looking for so they can plug you in. Mauricia, any advice from you about getting involved?
I think not only is it easy to get involved at Rutgers, but I think there's always the opportunity to try something different and something new. I'm always a fan of saying you may have done it for 4 years in high school, and Rutgers may have something that's completely different. It's okay to try it. You may not love it, but at least you've tried it and you've experienced it. So don't be afraid to try something different or explore something new that we do have here.
Great. Well, at this point, we're at the 30-minute mark. We haven't gotten comments recently. I'm going to answer one last question, and then we'll wrap it up. So if you have any last-minute questions, please don't hesitate to post them in the comments. We had one final question just asking generally about the idea of if I live on a different campus, will I have a different experience? Honestly, our experiences are similar when we talk to students who live on any campus. If you look at the group that we have here, they work on all of the different campuses. They've talked about communities and experiences that they've had in buildings, and those experiences sound similar, and obviously the members of the community make that experience personal and unique to that space and to that time frame. So your experience may be different in terms of different events or different things, but overall, all of our staff members are looking to build that community, are looking to make a neighborhood where you know the people living around you, where you can succeed, where you can be a student, and where you can feel comfortable. So there is no difference where you live, because we are going to work with you, and we hope that you will obviously work with us to build the best community in that area. Again, at this point, I'm going to wrap up. I really thank you all for joining us, for watching, for asking your questions. I want to thank our panelists, Chris, Hino, Matt, and Mauricia, thank you so much for giving of your time today. I really appreciate and I loved hearing your experience and your wisdom, and I know that our audience did as well. I want to remind you that next week at this exact time, so July 16th at noon, we are going to be doing another Hangout with our professional staff members who work in student support in our department. These are the staff members that work on special accommodations. They work on working with students who are in crisis, who have violated a policy. We're also going to be meeting one of the people who is responsible for where you're living and your assignments. So if you have questions about that and how that process works, please join us next week at noon, wherever you are, by following the link. Finally, on July 30th at 7:30 p.m., we are going to meet our Residence Hall Association students. These are students who are involved, as Matt spoke about a little earlier, involved in our hall government. They do things like advocate for the students in the buildings and ask for things to change, bring issues, or propose solutions for things going on in the residence halls, as well as putting on fun events, fun sessions for the students to just enjoy and to relax. All of these are going to be available in the next few weeks. I hope you will join us. As always, you can go back through this YouTube link and watch this video as many times as you want. It'll be available on our website. I ask you all, please follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/resnights, RESKNIGHTS, or follow us on Twitter at resnights. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your summer, and we look forward for you coming, moving in, and becoming resident Knights. Thank you very much, and have a great summer.